Hey guys, my name is Beckett, and this is my presentation for this week's disorder. Mine is on gender dysphoria, so I'm going to go ahead and show my screen. Um, all right, so I just want to start off by saying, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the transgender population as it results or relates to gender dysphoria. But it's important to note that other people can experience gender dysphoria, most notably the non-binary community. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the transgender population. So a lot of like the treatments and things, while they could relate to other populations, mainly they're the transgender population. All right, so what is gender dysphoria? So according to the Mayo Clinic, gender dysphoria is the feeling of discomfort or distress that might occur in people whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth. According to the DSM-5, gender dysphoria has a marked incongruence between the gender they're assigned and their expressed gender. So essentially, there's a feeling that something isn't right with both of these definitions. There's lots of specifics, like with everything else in the DSM, lots of specifics about what feelings you have and how long you felt them and what age they started and things like that, to be able to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. um, I am trans, so I was born female. So when I was going through this, it is a very long process of talking to therapists and them asking you about how you grew up and when you started feeling these feelings and stuff like that. So it's a very long process to get diagnosed with this. Um, yeah. So symptoms. Not all of these are always present. It's unique for person to person, but as an overview, these are things that can and are most often associated with gender dysphoria. The incongruence between the individual's experience and expressed gender and primary sex characteristics, um, lasting for at least 6 months. That's one of the DSM requirements. Basically, a strong desire to get rid of your primary sex characteristics, a strong desire to have sex characteristics of the gender that you identify with, a strong desire to be identified and called in society like the gender and the name that you prefer. Um, Essentially, not all of these have to be present, like I already said, um, but there are a lot of other factors that go into this. As I'll talk about a little bit later, there's a lot of other disorders that overlap with this, that contribute to this. Like depression is very high in the transgender community, and suicide risk and things like that that result from this feeling that your brain and your body do not match. Yeah. So, who has it? According to the DSM-5, among individuals who are assigned male at birth, approximately 0.005% to 0.014% are later diagnosed with gender dysphoria. For those who are assigned female at birth, like me, it's a little bit lower, which I thought was really interesting because in a lot of the readings I was doing, other countries is the opposite. Females who are people who are assigned female at birth uh, are more often diagnosed with gender dysphoria, especially in like Europe and stuff. Um, so I just thought that was an interesting difference. It's important to keep in mind for these numbers that these are people who are estimates based on people who would seek formal treatment. So it could be a lot higher, but there are a lot of like societal factors that go into this. Like I'm from a very country, southern, small town in North Carolina, so things like that, like people can deter people from coming out and making the transition and stuff like that. So the number could be higher. Uh, we just have no way of knowing with how society is and how people are prejudiced against the transgender community and stuff like that. So what causes it? Like many disorders, there's a variety of factors, and nobody can really like pinpoint one specific cause. Uh, there are studies that I've linked to that um, hormone imbalances in the womb before you're born have been linked to having a higher risk of being diagnosed with gender dysphoria and being transgender. Um, and there actually are studies now that there are links between your sex signaling hormone genes and gender dysphoria. So there's going to be a link in the discussion board, but I did find where they are talking about that people who are have brain scans that are transgender, their brains react to stimuli the same way that a cis person would. So, like for instance, like if I were to get a brain scan, my brain should react like a cisgender man because I'm a trans man. So there are um, more studies happening as where technology is improving, and transgender people are in the media more to kind of back up like and authenticate and validate our experience and our identity. So now I'm gonna play this video. This is a really good video I found. It's a TED Talk. It's a little bit too long for me to play the entire video, so we're just gonna watch a little bit. All right. So, like I said, the video is a little bit too long for the like time parameters for this presentation, but I'm going to link it because it's a really good video, and it kind of gives you some insight into like living with um, gender dysphoria. So, for my website evaluation, I found one that is by Psychology Today. Um, which is published by the American Psychiatric Association. Um, so I really liked it because they have a bunch of different disorders on here, but they talk about um, like features of it and symptoms, causes, treatments, what it looks like in children, adults. Um, and one of the things I really liked about this is that they talk about a critique about the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which I thought was interesting since APA is who publishes the DSM. But they even talk about on this website, which is also published by them, that there's been a lot of talk of removing it from the DSM because it's a social I don't want to say issue, but like a social thing and not a mental disorder. Um, or there's like talk that it could be considered one or the other. So, like I mentioned, another thing on this website I really liked is it talks about the other co-occurring disorders. So up to 50% of people with gender dysphoria attempt suicide, which is like a staggering amount. Like it's one of the highest populations for suicide and suicide risk. And then 26% of people with gender dysphoria resort to substance abuse. Um, so there's just some statistics to keep in mind about this population. And then, so what are some treatments? So let me move. So there are many different things, and it's important to note that not all of these are going to be used for everybody. Some people, transition all the way, some don't. There's really no set like treatment plan. But some typical routes are counseling and therapy. Um, this is kind of like the first stop because in order to do any of these other things, you have to get um, signed off by a medical or a mental health professional. Um, besides social transition, you can do that, have your friends and family call you by the name you want and your pronouns you want. But kind of for everything else, legal and medical, you have to have a mental health professional sign off on it. So some other things people do for treatment, legal transitioning, they change your name, you can change your gender marker, um, social security, all that stuff. Medical, there's surgery and hormone replacement therapy. Again, not everybody does all of these, and not doing them or having a lack of them doesn't, disqualify you from having gender dysphoria. So these are my resources, and that is the end of my presentation. So thank you guys, and I look forward to reading your comments.